In a hyper-connected world, where we're just a click away from each other, a question echoes more and more frequently. How is it possible to feel alone, even surrounded by so many? Technology promises us closeness, a digital bond that should keep us together. And yet, paradoxically, feelings of loneliness intensify. They affect both those surrounded by hundreds of virtual friends and those who choose isolation. Loneliness carries a stigma. It's often seen as a void, an unwanted state. We're taught to avoid it, to fill it with company and distractions. The absence of others seems to reveal something wrong within us. But what if loneliness is more than just an uncomfortable vacuum? Perhaps it's a rare chance to connect with ourselves, an encounter with something essential, yet often avoided. In this space where only we exist, without social masks or filters, we confront who we truly are. Yet the paradox persists. Loneliness exists even in a world where digital proximity is abundant. This is the paradox we'll explore. What is the true meaning of loneliness, and what might it teach us? Loneliness, though feared, may be much more than the simple absence of company. It offers the potential to introduce us to ourselves, revealing what we might avoid when surrounded by others. Amid all the external voices, isolation provides rare clarity, like a silent mirror reflecting our deepest thoughts and feelings. Through a nihilist, optimistic lens, loneliness isn't something to avoid, but an opportunity. It's a space where we create meaning, a place where, free from external pressures, we can be who we truly are. Rather than a desperate void, it becomes fertile ground for introspection and personal growth. In this quiet state, nihilist optimism teaches us to see life as lacking universal purpose, but full of opportunities to build our own meaning. Loneliness, then, transforms into a companion. Instead of looking for meaning in the outside world, this viewpoint encourages us to construct it within, through solitary encounters with our own thoughts and emotions. Isolation, therefore, offers more than a break from interactions. It invites a process of self-discovery, often accessible only in the quiet of our own company. In the next chapter, we'll explore how science and philosophy see loneliness, not as something to escape, but perhaps as a natural path to self-understanding. In science, loneliness is often linked to our instinctual need for connection. Our brains, shaped by evolution, prioritize social bonds essential for survival. When we're alone, our bodies respond uniquely. Stress levels rise, and our sense of well-being tends to drop. Studies show that prolonged isolation can even impact physical health, underscoring that we are by nature social beings. However, philosophy approaches loneliness from a different angle. Rather than viewing it as deprivation, many thinkers consider it a path to genuine self-understanding. Schopenhauer, for example, believed voluntary isolation strengthened individuality, distancing us from society's influences. To him, only in solitude can one discover their essence, free from others' expectations. Nietzsche saw loneliness as essential to personal development. To him, solitude offered freedom, allowing individuals to explore profound ideas and questions. Free from collective thought constraints, the mind expands, daring to reflect on life and its meanings. In this context, isolation becomes a state that strengthens will and individuality. Science and philosophy complement each other in their perspectives on loneliness. While one highlights the biological need for socialization, the other suggests isolation helps us find intellectual freedom. Within this paradox, a balanced view emerges. Loneliness can be both a natural condition and a powerful choice, transforming how we see ourselves and the world around us. Existential philosophy advances this idea, proposing that loneliness is often unavoidable and essential to an authentic life. Kierkegaard, for instance, viewed isolation as a chance for self-confrontation, a path to discovering one's own existence. For him, being alone meant facing internal truths without fear, embracing the doubts and certainties that only arise in silence. Thus, isolation transcends mere absence of contact, becoming a journey of self-discovery. Philosophy teaches us that in solitude, we can hear our own voices, clear and uninfluenced. It offers a space where external pressures dissipate, revealing who we truly are, separate from society's influences and expectations. While science emphasizes the benefits of socialization for physical and mental health, philosophy reminds us of the invaluable nature of isolation. It provides a freedom that can only be found in the absence of others. In the next chapter, we'll explore this duality further. Isolation as suffering or as a choice for freedom, where we find the independence necessary to truly be ourselves. Loneliness often presents an intriguing duality. It can be seen as both suffering and as a form of freedom. Isolation can bring pain, triggering feelings of abandonment, exclusion, and even anxiety. For many, being alone equates to disconnection from the world and a loss of the experiences that come with social life. Yet this same state of isolation also holds the potential for liberation. Freedom in isolation is a unique opportunity, allowing us to step back from societal influences and expectations. Without the demands of others, we're invited to reflect on our own desires, values, and choices. In this sense, loneliness becomes a safe space to explore individuality, a moment when we can free ourselves from external impositions and uncover our true essence. Nietzsche argued that true independence is only found in solitude. For him, isolation allowed individuals to hear their own voices, uninfluenced by others' opinions. The freedom to think, to question, and to redefine existence becomes clearer and more powerful when we're detached from societal pressures. This liberating aspect of loneliness reminds us that being alone doesn't necessarily mean being lost. Instead, isolation can be a path to authenticity. When we're alone, the pressure to conform fades. We're free to be who we truly are, to explore our thoughts and choices without fear of judgment or expectations. However, this freedom requires courage. Isolation isn't always comfortable. It requires facing ourselves, accepting vulnerabilities, and addressing fears that are often ignored when we're with others. Embracing solitude means confronting what drives us, defines us, and genuinely matters to us. This dilemma between pain and freedom makes loneliness a complex, multifaceted state. It can be painful for those who seek constant validation, yet incredibly liberating for those willing to confront and know themselves. In the next chapter, we'll examine how technology impacts this experience of loneliness, deepening the paradox of feeling connected, yet isolated. In an age of advanced technology, the concept of connection has changed dramatically. We're always just a few taps away from anyone, and social media offers the illusion of constant closeness. But does this hyperconnectivity truly fill the void of loneliness? Science reveals that even though we're virtually together, many still feel deeply isolated. Digital interactions often lack the same emotional impact as an in-person conversation or physical presence. Studies show that social media can amplify feelings of isolation. As we observe others' lives through screens, we're drawn to compare ourselves to a reality that's often filtered. This constant contrast can create a sense of inadequacy and intensify loneliness, as we're connected yet disconnected from genuine human interaction. Moreover, the nature of virtual connections is shallow. Unlike face-to-face relationships, which involve emotional exchange and eye contact, online interactions tend to be brief and fleeting. This lack of depth leaves us feeling empty, as human touch and emotional support get lost in instant messages and quick reactions. Technology, though it facilitates communication, also changes the way we interact. Short messages, emojis, and rapid replies replace genuine conversations. This impersonal exchange fuels the sense that we're merely skimming the surface of relationships. The desire for connection remains unsatisfied, and ironically, the more time we spend online, the more distant we may feel from real human presence. On the other hand, technology allows us to stay in touch with people worldwide. This can be enriching, offering cultural exchanges and exposure to different perspectives. Yet nothing can replace the complexity and depth that physical contact provides. Without touch, eye contact, or hearing a live voice, connections feel less authentic and more transient. This paradox of virtual connection raises an important question. At what point does technology bring us closer? And when does it intensify our loneliness? This dilemma has no easy answer, but it reveals that, while we stay digitally connected, the real challenge may be reconnecting with the human side of relationships. In the next chapter, we'll explore how philosophy views the value of isolation. Could deep personal connection be found by embracing solitude instead of constantly seeking connection? Perhaps in this context, loneliness becomes the key to a more authentic encounter, both with ourselves and others. Philosophy considers loneliness a state of self-discovery and introspection, a chance to dive deep into our own being. For many thinkers, loneliness is an ideal opportunity to explore who we are without external influences. Kierkegaard, for instance, believed that isolation was a path to authenticity, a way to confront our own truths without the distractions of the outside world. When we distance ourselves from external voices, we have the chance to hear our own. This silence allows reflection, creating space to ask what we truly desire, believe, and value. For existential philosophy, being alone is an invitation to self-knowledge, where the mind can wander freely, free from the pressure to be understood or accepted by others. Schopenhauer, another philosopher who valued solitude, argued that only in isolation could we reach true individuality. To him, voluntary loneliness allowed us to escape society's influences, which often conform thoughts and behaviors. In distancing ourselves, we cultivate unique ideas and preferences, building an identity that's more genuine. This self-discovery process can be challenging. Being alone means confronting fears, insecurities, and thoughts we might avoid. Loneliness places us face to face with our vulnerabilities and doubts. Yet, it's in this confrontation that isolation's transformative power lies. Facing these aspects allows us to break internal barriers and free ourselves from fears shaped by society. Isolation, then, provides a rare freedom in social interactions. When we're alone, we don't need to play roles or maintain appearances. There's no judgment or expectation. We can experiment with ideas, explore thoughts, and create space for new perspectives without fear of rejection. This intellectual and emotional freedom makes isolation a powerful tool for introspection. Additionally, philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre believed that isolation lets us reevaluate relationships and identify those that truly matter. Loneliness acts like a lens that reveals the authentic nature of our connections. It helps us see which relationships are genuine and which ones are kept out of habit or social convenience. Thus, loneliness isn't merely the absence of others, but a doorway to deeper understanding of ourselves and the bonds we choose to maintain. In silence, we get the chance to rethink who we are and what we want without the constant interference of others' opinions. This self-knowledge prepares us for more authentic, meaningful interactions with others. The philosophy of isolation suggests that rather than fearing loneliness, we should embrace it as a time for growth. It's within this introspective space that we're able to ask the most important questions and hear the answers that genuinely come from within us. For existential thinkers, loneliness is a resource for those seeking to live authentically and discover their true essence. In loneliness, we find both the challenge and the freedom to confront our existence. This is where our deepest desires and most intense fears can emerge. From this point, we can begin to construct a life rooted in self-awareness, not in imposed standards or external expectations. In the next chapter, we'll see how a nihilistic, optimistic view sees loneliness as a unique opportunity for self-discovery and freedom. Through a nihilistic, optimistic perspective, loneliness takes on a new meaning. Without a universal purpose imposed upon us, it's up to each of us to give meaning to isolation. Instead of seeing emptiness as something to be filled, this view sees it as a space full of possibilities where we can build our own significance. In this way, loneliness is no longer something to fear, but an opportunity for self-discovery and growth. In everyday life, this perspective teaches us to value moments of solitude as opportunities for rest and reflection. Isolation provides relief from the constant pressure to conform to others' expectations. When we're alone, we have the chance to assess who we truly are and what we want, without the influence of social norms or the need to meet others' standards. In this sense, loneliness becomes an ally in personal development. It allows us to see our emotional needs, recognize insecurities, and strengthen self-esteem. Being comfortable with ourselves, without needing external validation, is one of the greatest accomplishments that isolation can bring. This state of emotional autonomy helps us live with more authenticity. Moreover, this view encourages us to turn isolation into an intentional habit rather than an unwanted state. Small moments of solitude, like a solo walk or a quiet reading session, become valuable opportunities to recharge and reconnect with what truly matters. Amid the rush of modern life, loneliness offers a refuge that promotes well-being and mental balance. Instead of seeking distractions to escape loneliness, a nihilistic optimist suggests embracing it as part of the human experience. Being alone is a way to cultivate independence and inner peace, fundamental aspects for facing daily challenges with greater serenity. In this way, loneliness becomes a tool for everyday life, helping us become more resilient and mindful. Ultimately, isolation is less about suffering and more about a valuable resource. A nihilistic, optimistic view shows that, in the absence of universal meaning, each moment of loneliness is a chance to create our own. In the next chapter, the conclusion, we'll bring these ideas together and reflect on what we've learned about loneliness, technology, and self-discovery in a hyper-connected world. Throughout this journey, we've seen that loneliness, though often avoided, can be one of life's most enriching and transformative experiences. In a hyper-connected world, where we're constantly surrounded by stimuli, isolation offers us a moment of pause. Seen through a nihilistic, optimistic lens, loneliness isn't just a void. It's an invitation to create our own meaning. Science and philosophy remind us that, despite digital connections, true connection is what we find within ourselves. By facing loneliness, we learn to value silence, introspection, and the answers that only emerge in the absence of distractions. This encounter with ourselves, free from external pressures, is where we discover who we truly are. Instead of running from loneliness, we can embrace it as a chance for self-discovery and growth. In a world pushing us towards continuous connection, embracing isolation may be an act of courage, After all, being alone can be the first step toward finding the freedom and authenticity we seek. The question remains, what will you choose to make of your solitude?